At first, she just grew quieter. She didn't laugh when he said something silly. She turned away when he reached for her in bed. Then came the late nights, the phone that never left her hand, and the sentence that made everything crystal clear. "You're overthinking things." He didn't yell, didn't create drama. He observed, watched as the person he loved more than life itself slowly turned into a stranger. And when the truth hit, he didn't break. He waited, chose the right moment. Then he laid the photos in front of her. No words, no accusations. In that instant, whatever trace of something real still flickered in her eyes died out. But that, too, was part of the plan. Because while she was busy playing love with someone else, he was already building his way out. And believe this, she wasn't ready for the man who stood before her in the end. She betrayed. He turned betrayal into a weapon. And by the time she realized what she had lost, it was far too late. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now let's get started. My name is Nicholas, and for many years, I was married to Aurora. Like any relationship, ours had its moments of joy and hardship. Through it all, I clung to the belief that we'd weather the storms together. But with the benefit of hindsight, I now realize that while I was holding on tightly, she had already started to let go. The unraveling wasn't sudden. At first, the changes were barely noticeable. She stopped doing the little considerate things she used to. I dismissed it as exhaustion. Everyone goes through stressful times. People get worn out. I figured it was just a rough spell. But this wasn't a temporary dip. Something fundamental had shifted. No one wakes up one morning and simply decides to treat their partner like a nuisance. That kind of transformation has roots. It comes from somewhere. I became obsessed with finding out where. Aurora started coming home later than usual. When I asked about it, she gave vague answers, as if the question barely deserved a response. "Just out," she'd mutter, eyes locked on her phone screen. And if I pressed her, "Out where?" I'd get an exaggerated sigh or a dismissive glance. It felt like my concern had become a burden. That wasn't the Aurora I knew. The woman I married used to tell me everything, often in more detail than I asked for. Now, I was lucky if I got more than a monosyllable. Then came the phone fixation. It was always with her, clutched in her hand as she sat on the couch, brought with her even for a drink of water. At night, that screen's dull glow lit up our bedroom. I'd ask who she was talking to. "Just a friend," she'd say, emotionless. If I asked for a name, her tone would ice over. "Why does it matter?" she snapped once. Lying there next to her, I realized I couldn't pretend anymore. I turned to her and asked quietly, "Aurora, what's going on? Why are you pulling away from me?" She barely looked up. With an irritated sigh, she said, "If I had something to tell you, I would. Now let me sleep." That hit like a punch. Not long after, the truth I feared most came crashing down. A friend called me, his voice hesitant but serious. "Hey man, I don't want to be the one to say this, but I saw Aurora. She was with some guy, and it didn't look innocent." I froze. My first instinct was denial. That couldn't be. Not Aurora. Not the woman I married. There had to be another explanation. But then all the red flags, her late nights, her distance, the secrecy, flooded my mind. I couldn't deny it anymore. This hadn't come out of nowhere. It had been building for a long time. Suspecting something and having undeniable proof are two very different things. I needed evidence, something concrete. I knew where to look. Her phone. Lately, she'd guarded it like it held state secrets. No matter where she went, even into the bathroom, it never left her side. She never set it down. And if she used it around me, she angled the screen away, just enough to make sure I couldn't see. That alone wasn't proof. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. One evening, my chance finally came. She left her phone on the couch and walked into the bathroom. My hands trembled as I picked it up. This was it. I swiped to unlock it, only to be stopped cold. The passcode had changed. I tried the old one just in case. Nothing. My heart sank. We'd never hidden things like this before. We always shared our passwords. This wasn't some accident. She was deliberately keeping me out. I put the phone back exactly as I found it and stared at it, heart pounding. If she was cheating, she'd slip up eventually. They always do. If I couldn't find answers in her phone, I'd have to get them another way. I'd have to see it with my own eyes. And a few days later, I got the chance. Aurora told me she was going out to run a quick errand. No specifics, no mention of where or with whom. It didn't sit right. So, a few minutes after she left, I grabbed my keys and quietly followed. She drove through a few neighborhoods before pulling up to a house I didn't recognize. She parked, got out with ease, and walked up to the door like she'd done it 100 times. No hesitation, no looking over her shoulder. The door opened, and a man, someone I'd never seen before, greeted her with a smile like he'd been waiting for her. She smiled back and walked in. I took photos, every step, every second. I didn't confront her. I didn't call out. I didn't storm up to the door. I sat in my car staring at that door, watching the truth unfold. And when the weight of silence became unbearable, I started the engine and drove home. She returned that night as though nothing had happened. That, more than anything, broke me. The ease with which she slipped back into our shared life, as if it were all still real. But for me, it was over. The guessing, the hoping, the waiting. I had my answer, and it was enough. I wasn't going to let it simmer in silence any longer. I asked her to join me in the living room. She rolled her eyes, clearly annoyed, but slumped onto the couch anyway, arms crossed, eyes sharp, like I was already wasting her time. I inhaled deeply, met her gaze, and said with calm finality, "This ends tonight. Or we do." My voice stayed level. No yelling, no threats. Just a truth spoken plainly, a line drawn with quiet resolve. Her face twisted in irritation, and she shook her head. "I seriously don't know what you think is going on," she said, her tone flat, void of emotion. "You're imagining things." I didn't respond with words. Instead, I pulled my phone from my pocket, held the screen toward her, and let the images speak for me. There she was, entering his place, smiling, laughing, her posture far too intimate for denial. I watched her closely. For a split second, her expression cracked, her eyes widened, just barely. She'd been caught, but just as fast, it was gone. The flicker of guilt was quickly consumed by something colder, rage. "You were following me?" she snapped, voice rising. "Are you seriously spying on me now? What kind of paranoid freak does that, Nicholas?" Something hardened inside me then, like a door quietly locking shut. She wasn't sorry, not even close. No regret, no ownership. Instead, she flipped the script, made me the villain for catching her in the lie. I exhaled slowly and nodded once. "Got it," I said, rising to my feet. No shouting, no accusations. There was nothing left to salvage. She'd already chosen her path. The days that followed were hollow and silent. We shared the same house, but it felt like we were living in two separate dimensions. No conversations, no pretending, just two strangers orbiting the same dead space, waiting for the inevitable. She didn't explain. She didn't apologize, and I didn't need her to. Her silence told me everything. I knew she hadn't ended it. She wasn't planning to. I didn't beg. I didn't cling. That's not love. That's surrender. And I wasn't about to lose myself trying to hold on to someone who'd already let go. While she moved through our days like nothing had changed, I quietly scheduled a meeting with an attorney and started the process. If she wanted to be with him, fine. She could go. But I wouldn't let her wreck me on the way out. Then one morning, As I was getting ready for work, something unexpected happened. Aurora stepped into the room. I was halfway through buttoning my shirt when she spoke, calm and almost casual. "I'm making dinner tonight." My hands froze. I looked over, caught off guard. Aurora hadn't cooked in ages, not since everything started unraveling. Lately, she barely looked at me. Cold stares, monosyllabic replies, like my presence was something she had to tolerate. And now, this? A home-cooked meal? I turned to face her. She stood by the dresser, eyes on her phone, deliberately avoiding mine. That's when I knew something wasn't right. I waited, thinking she might explain, but she didn't. "All right," I said, voice flat. If this was a performance, I wasn't about to play along. At work, the thought of it kept circling. Was this a peace offering? Guilt trying to wear the face of normalcy? Or just the next act in whatever game she thought she was playing? It didn't really matter, because what she didn't know was that I was already gone in every way that counted. The papers were prepped, waiting for the right moment. And more than that, there was something else she'd never seen coming. While she'd been off chasing secrecy and excitement, I'd found a quiet, unexpected connection of my own with her best friend. What started as venting, long conversations about Aurora and the mess she was making, had slowly evolved into something deeper. Someone who saw past the mask Aurora wore, someone who genuinely understood. So if this dinner was meant to reel me back in, she was too late. I wasn't that man anymore. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't plead. I'd walk away, on my terms. That night, I stepped into the house with a strange, steady peace in my chest. The scent of food cooking hit me as soon as I walked through the door, something I hadn't smelled in our kitchen in what felt like forever. There was a time when that scent might have meant something. Not anymore. Aurora moved around the kitchen like she hadn't set fire to everything, placing dishes, pouring glasses of wine, a faint smile on her lips that didn't reach her eyes. We ate mostly in silence. She didn't ask about my day. I didn't ask about hers. The only sounds were silverware against porcelain and the quiet thrum of tension between us. Midway through the meal, I set my fork down and studied her. She looked calm. Too calm. Like someone rehearsing a monologue she'd already memorized. I leaned back slightly, kept my tone neutral. "So, did you end it?" She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned back too, and for the first time that night, her lips curved into a satisfied little smile, like this was the moment she'd been waiting to unveil. "I'm leaving you," she said simply. She let it hang there, then added, "Aziel makes me feel alive. There's passion with him, excitement. He sees me. He makes me feel like I matter again. With you, it's just routine, predictable." Her words landed like the final move in a game she thought she'd already won. No guilt, no hesitation, just the truth, served cold. And in that instant, I realized something profound. This wasn't a tragedy. This was freedom. And I was ready. I know it's wrong, but I can't seem to stop myself. I'm starving for something real, even if it's fleeting. I've been emotionally disconnected for so long, and he reminded me what it feels like to actually be alive. I can't go back to feeling invisible in my own marriage. I exhaled slowly, more amused than upset. There was a time when those words would have destroyed me, when I would have begged her to stay, to reconsider, to fight for us. But now? Now they felt like the final lines of a story that had overstayed its welcome. A calm, genuine smile tugged at my lips. I stood, walked to the bedroom, and returned with a neat stack of documents. I laid them on the table in front of her and slid them her way. "Great," I said, my voice steady and composed. "I've already taken care of everything. All that's left is your signature." For the first time that night, she hesitated. This wasn't what she expected from me. Her eyes darted between the paperwork and my face, searching for any sign of emotion to latch onto, but I gave her nothing. Just silence. Then, ding-dong. Her head snapped toward the front door. She wasn't expecting anyone, but I was. I'd been waiting for this moment all night. I pushed my chair back and walked to the door with deliberate calm. When I opened it, she was standing there, effortless, confident, Aurora's best friend. The woman who had once held all of Aurora's secrets. The woman I turned to when I realized my marriage had already ended. I stepped aside and motioned toward her. "Meet my girlfriend." The look on Aurora's face was unforgettable. It wasn't just shock, it was betrayal, disbelief, maybe even a trace of remorse. She'd forgotten the first rule of the game. If you're going to play, be prepared to lose. I won't lie. Aurora didn't take it well once she saw the tables had turned. She erupted. 1 second she was stunned, the next she was shouting, calling me names, accusing me of losing my mind. But I stayed quiet. I didn't need to engage. My part was over. The divorce papers sat untouched on the table. The choice was hers now: sign them or let the court system handle it. At first, she pretended not to care, acting composed, as if she was ready to walk away with grace. But I knew her better than that. When it hit her that this was real, she became the version of herself I'd always dreaded. The one who clung to vengeance when things didn't go her way. This wasn't about our broken relationship anymore. It was about retaliation. She launched a full attack, trying to ruin me. She went to court and cast herself as the victim, claiming I was controlling, manipulative, and emotionally cruel. Said I made her feel isolated, worthless, shattered her bit by bit. And she didn't stop there. She spun lies, things that never happened, just to reshape the story and turn me into the villain. And the worst part? Some people believed her. That's the thing about lies. Say them with enough certainty and they start to sound like truth. But I refused to let her rewrite our story. When it was my turn to speak, I let the evidence do the work. I had photos of her at her lover's home, messages that left no room for doubt. This wasn't just a friend, and financial records, clear proof she'd been draining our shared account to fund her affair. My lawyer laid it all out, piece by piece, every transaction, every detail of her betrayal. But what really landed was the emotional fallout. I'd spent months drowning in confusion, questioning my reality, wondering if I was the problem. My attorney argued that her deceit and manipulation inflicted lasting psychological harm, and the judge listened. When the verdict came down, I saw the loss in Aurora's eyes. The asset split might have looked fair on paper, but the mountain of evidence tilted everything. I walked away with most of what I'd worked for. She didn't get a clean escape. She didn't win. In trying to break me, she only revealed who she really was. And when I stepped out of that courtroom, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. You'd think I'd feel triumphant, vindicated, maybe even whole. But the truth? Nobody walks away from something like that without scars. I told myself I'd moved on. I started seeing Aurora's best friend. She'd been there through it all, saw the worst of it, and offered a kind of compassion I hadn't known in years. Still, something inside me had shifted. No matter who I was with, I found myself bracing for the moment it would all fall apart again. That kind of betrayal leaves a wound. I learned the hard way that trust isn't given freely. It's earned. And once it breaks, it never quite returns to what it once was. Will I ever get married again? I'm not sure. It's not that I don't believe in love. It's that I don't know if I can see it the same way anymore. It's like touching a hot stove as a kid. You only need to get burned once to never forget the pain. Even years later, you still flinch near the heat. And me? I was burned badly. But I walked away with a lesson I'll never let go of. Sometimes, the deepest wounds come from the ones closest to us. And when they cut you, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to lash out or get revenge. It's to walk away, whole. Holding on to bitterness is a waste of energy. Honestly, It drains more than it gives. The most powerful form of revenge? Thriving, rising beyond the hurt, becoming unforgettable, so far out of reach that they'll never get close again. Let your evolution echo as a reminder of what they let slip through their fingers. And believe me, Aurora felt the sting of that loss. That was all the closure I ever needed. So, that's the journey I've been on. A bit of a wild ride, sure. But isn't that life? Just when you think you know someone, when you believe you've built something real together, suddenly, it's gone, tossed aside like it meant nothing. But here's the truth that matters most. I didn't let it destroy me. And if you ever find yourself in a moment like that, don't let it destroy you either. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.